2015 meeting of the school committee will come to order. As is our tradition, please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag and our country.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to open by offering our thanks to the members of the Milton Police Department and our own Milton Public School staff for the critical roles that they played in an incident that occurred last week where an individual that was unauthorized to enter the building tried to do so. And I am pleased to say that all of the training that we engaged in worked perfectly. Our staff, our principals, our principal, our vice principals, and even the front office staff, as well as a number of other people, performed admirably. So thank you to the superintendent and our entire team. Just a few changes on the agenda. We are striking the June 11th minutes, still working on those. I am moving the full-day kindergarten grant update under the superintendent's report. I'd like the superintendent to talk about that directly under her report. And we are removing the second reading of the domestic violence leave policy. Still gathering more information on that. With those changes, let's move ahead. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Walker. Could we possibly take a moment of silence? I meant to speak to you about this before the meeting and I forgot. For Stephen Wilkie, who passed away.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Steve Wilkie was someone that was close to any of us who have been associated in any way with Milton hockey. He's been a fixture for decades, really, and was a real inspiration to all of us, and he passed away recently. So thank you, Ms. Sheridan. If you would, just a moment of silence for Steve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maura, do we have anyone for citizen speak? Our own Frank Scroth. Hi, Frank.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. It's election season. My favorite time of year. And I just wanted to announce that I again will be hosting a candidates forum in partnership with the Milton High School debate team. At this point, I really just show up. And these students are researching issues. They will moderate and they will ask questions of all the candidates. I believe this is going to be the only forum in which all three of the school committee candidates are going to be present. So I want to be clear that the public is warmly encouraged to attend. It'll be a great opportunity to hear what they think and why they feel they're best suited to represent the schools, Board of Selectmen. Are you running for Board of Selectmen, Matt? No. Not yet. Well, I expect April Fool, but someday. And I'm serious. It'll be at Fuller Village at 1 o'clock on Saturday, April 11th. So again, you're all invited, and hope to see you then. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Am I forgetting?
The date and the time again?
April 11th.
It's what time?
1 o'clock, Fuller Village, 1372 Brush Hill Road. And lastly, I want to just say a personal thank you to Ms. Sheridan and Ms. Kelly for all their years of service to the town and to the children of this town.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Frank.
Mr. Walker?
Yeah.
She wants wellness off.
Say it again.
She wants wellness off the agenda.
Okay. and a late-breaking change to the agenda, health and wellness, we're striking. Okay, superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. If I might, Dr. Karen Clares, first, very important on the agenda, we have Milton High School art students here. We wait all year, we'll start tomorrow, waiting for next year's students, and I would ask Ms. Karen Hughes, Milton High School art teacher, and the Milton High School students who are able to join us here tonight to bring their pieces, their award-winning art pieces. So while we're waiting for Ms. Hughes and the students and to hear about the competition, we always wait. Their artwork has been in display in Boston. We wait till the artwork returns. So this is a highlight night in the entire school year. So students and Ms. Hughes, I'll turn it over to you for introductions.
Hi, I'm Ms.
And
Hughes.
welcome. Sit over here.
Thank you for having us. I'm tap dancing because a number of my students had a half day today and are at home. Some are feeling ill, but I think they knew they were not going to be here because they left us with their self-portraits. So at least we can acknowledge that. But I will acknowledge all the hard work and explain a little bit about what we do here every year because it's really important. So being an art teacher in high school, we have numerous competitions, and the biggest competition for the state is the Boston Globe Scholastics Art Award. And each of the art teachers, myself and Miss Allo, are given 20 nominations. So with 20 nominations, I have to choose out of all my students which 20 pieces I will submit, and then Miss Allo chooses as well. And I'm also given the chance to submit portfolios that are senior works. I can submit as many portfolios as I want, and I usually submit about 20. And those are pieces where students can submit up to 8 pieces of work. It has to be 8, and they have to write an artist statement and a thesis. So it's a written reflection about their works. This is so important. So the winners are chosen out of that in Massachusetts, and that's where we get to see not only what we're doing in our classroom, but what all the other schools in Massachusetts are doing in theirs as well, and our students get to see what they're doing and how they stack up. Does it matter if we win or lose? Not really. The fact that we're able to compete and bring these kids to the level where they get to take their work in the classroom outside of the classroom and to the state and to see what other students are doing throughout the state is probably the best experience for them to have. Because with that, they will go on. They're not going to be in our classrooms their whole lives. They will go on to other classrooms, and life will take them where their jobs become their classrooms. And maybe they'll come back and visit. But for the most part, the experience to have is so huge. So that's where we're at with the 20 pieces, 40 altogether, 20 portfolios. And let me announce the winners. So we have Maya Adley here. She received an honorable mention for her painting, which isn't with us, but Maya came, so that's most important. Maria Dambrook, who received an honorable mention for her painting, which is...
Is it that one right there?
Right there. Maria tends to make pieces that are much larger than life, and her, so transporting them has been an issue. I'll get back to Maria in a moment, in a little bit. We have Annie Gayton, who's not here, but who also received an honorable mention for her drawing and self-portrait. Maddie Hoy, who received an honorable mention for her painting that is here, and it is a self-portrait in monochromatic tones, and it's a likeness of Maddie, so if you know her, you can say hello to her painting. Come in. This is why I tap dance. We have Josh Carey, who just walked in, who received a gold key for his drawing of himself, several selves. And also Josh received an honorable mention for another painting. Emma Predsosa received a silver key for her drawing self-portrait. She's not here, but her drawing speaks for itself. And Mr. Michael Wyatt, who is flagged by these two beautiful young ladies, and he received a gold key for his drawing. Now, Michael is very important because Michael's drawing, because it received a gold key, all gold keys are then taken to the next level, which is the New York competition. And in New York, all the work is brought together from across the nation, every single gold key winner from every single state. So Michael's gold key and Josh's gold key went head-to-head with the nation's gold keys. And Michael's gold key won.
Wow.
So his drawing won a gold key. And we were just talking with I was just talking with his parents, and I said, aren't you excited? You're going to Carnegie Hall in June for the weekend. I think it's 2 days. And his medal will be received on the stage at Carnegie Hall. He'll get to meet all the other I know they're going to want a chance to speak to you all, so I'll quickly go. Okay, so along with the gold keys, alongside the scholastics, are also 2 separate nominations, which are for juniors that I nominated specifically for Art All-State, which is a conference in UMass Dartmouth for the weekend for students, and they're hand-picked, hand-selected through an interview process and through the applications for the 2 candidates were written. I think they wrote at least 5 pages on the computer. What I could tell, they were copying and pasting everything. And then they have to have reference letters. So 2 nominations, and Maria Danbrook and Josh Carey received my nominations as juniors to go to Art All-State. They both were granted interviews, which has never happened. We usually get to the point where they're nominated, and then they thank us for the nominations. So they were both granted interviews, and we're waiting to hear, with bated breath, whether they will receive a weekend away to be with other students across the state. And that's a huge, huge award. So we are waiting on that. The next order of business, speaking of Josh Carey and Maria Danbrook, I'm going to pat them all on the back. Maria just received the Anthony Quinn Foundation Scholarship. Do you mind if I tell them for how much? $2,550 towards a pre-college preparatory program at Rhode Island School of Design and the Arts for 8 weeks this summer. 6 weeks this summer. And this was done through reference letters and a portfolio and her own gumption. And Josh Carey as well was just told, I called and I asked the woman on the phone, and I hope she doesn't watch Milton Cable, but she told me that she's not supposed to tell me these things on the phone, but that Josh Carey from the School and Museum of Fine Arts was granted a considerable amount of money, that was quote, considerable amount of money from their summer pre-college program at the School and Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. So I guess the moral is it's just nice to see their work and the pride that they take and all of their talent go beyond these walls, and that they're able to gain so many valuable experiences, just from having arts in Milton, but also being able to enjoy art in the community and then continue to enjoy art throughout the state and possibly the world. So that's my spiel. And I apologize for some of them not being here. It really is difficult on a half day to remember some things. I know it's hard for them.
Ms. Bagley-Jones?
Of course, I have to say something, right? First of all, I think I saw some of your work hanging up somewhere.
Oh, yeah,
Milton
that's
Art
something a
Center.
little bit,
Yeah. Just thought I'd mention that. But I'm so impressed with all of you, and art is such an important part of your lives, I'm sure. But I'm just curious, when did you really start getting into art? How young?
Each of them answer?
Karen, you can pass the mic now.
Oh,
You can just shout it out if you
You can
want.
take it off the stand.
When did you start getting interested in art?
I'm an artist, not a tech person. Here you go.
Okay. I'm Mairead. Hi. I have been doing art for most of my life. Both of my parents are pretty artistic, so it's always been a big influence on me. Yeah.
Great.
Where do you do art outside of uniform?
I take a lot of classes at Mass Art. I'm dual enrolled there right now. what else do I do?
And what about the summertime when your mom's down?
All right. I help out at the Milton Art Center a lot too.
That's great.
Well, art has always been a part of my life. I've been, doodling and drawing ever since I was a kid. And then at the end of elementary school and throughout middle school, I was in the ACE program at school, and that was definitely good to be doing art along with other really artistic and really talented people. And I've just continued it into high school.
Wonderful.
Not dual enrolled in any art college.
Also, I was in the ACE program in 5th grade, and I think that really, jumped me into, interest of art and painting and stuff, and it just relaxes me, and it's fun, so yeah. Also, not any extra art things going on.
Like the rest of them, I've been drawing since as long as I can remember, so art has always been a big part of my life.
Great. Thank you. That's what I thought you would say, but I just wanted to hear it. Thank you.
And they're all very excited to go to the Passport to the Arts next week, which is happening.
You can take that off the happenings. Do you want to share that?
I don't know all the dates, but I know all week. The notion is that we want to have students and children of Milton, as well as their families, come to all the schools and enjoy the arts. So we're featuring 1 or 2 schools per night, every night next week, and the students, even our high school students, will get passports, and they get stamped at the door or in the lobbies where the artwork will be hung, and it's just really fun to kind of go around and see what all the other schools are doing and all the levels are doing, because it really comes from kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. I don't have to tell you, I'm preaching to the choir, but it really starts in the beginning, because none of these kids could have done this without the education that they had in the elementary schools.
Ms. Padera?
I'm just really wondering if you're going to have all these things on display, because I heard about half of what you said, but I was just staring at the art. I mean, I'm just really fascinated by it. So are these works going to be on display and the others that you've mentioned?
All the works for the Scholastics will be on display. Michael's is the only piece that is in New York City right now, so his piece cannot be on display.
Under guard, and Steve, you probably have a guard for that.
It's tight security. But we have digital photographs of his work so that we can place on display, and it will be downstairs in the lobby.
That's great. I can't wait.
Great.
So humility is a virtue, but I think you were a little bit too humble about the moral of this story. The moral is that we have some extraordinarily talented students, and you have nurtured and inspired that talent, and we are competing statewide and nationally. And I'd say that's a pretty big story. So we're proud of them, and we're proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I beaming? That's good. Thank you again for giving us the opportunity to come here. It really is a big night, and I apologize for some of us not being here, but I will get to them tomorrow.
So, before you leave, on behalf of the system, we're so proud, and Chairman Walker's right. Ms. Hughes emails every morning the updates on art and art awards, and for the viewing public with this presentation, we'll have on the front of the webpage, but this Passport to the Arts, if you think you enjoyed tonight, then you will enjoy every night next week in a different Milton Public School. We'll put it on the web, and we have it down for later during happenings, and to be able to see from kindergarten to grade 12 the artwork.
And music concerts are connected to it. We have a cabaret the same night as the high school, so if you come to the high school on Thursday night from 5:30 to 7, you can enjoy the artwork and then go right into the cabaret, which is talented students performing, and you'll probably see some of these guys as well on stage.
Thank you. We're very proud.
Could we, as you leave, could we just give a shout out to all the art teachers from elementary school up, because they all had a role to play in the final products that we see here tonight. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you very much. Next, we'd like to invite our internal assessment team to join us at the table.
Do you want to introduce Ms. Boo?
I do. So while you're getting settled, before we begin, In our advancement budget, a very brief introduction, going into the third year of our advancement budget, again, framing the advancement budget, and the school committee asked if you were going to advance the system based on student data, what are the initiatives? I tell the story in this very room. These individuals can testify to everything from the arts, but based on the student data, we identified early literacy, closing identified achievement gaps, and science education. And again, using the student data, this school committee going to the warrant committee, going to a unanimous vote at town meeting over 2 years, have funded the text, materials and supplies, the extended day experiences, the professional development, and as a team, they could probably do this presentation equal to what I'm sharing with the public. One of the positions necessary, and that was a source, as I said to people, these individuals and the individuals at this table would have to stop what they were doing or work weekends for these data presentations. And so a data specialist was included in the advancement budget, and I'm here to tell you, and these individuals were on the team, we interviewed, we posted April, May. We interviewed May, June, July, August, through the fall. We interviewed several individuals. It's a very unique position, and I'm very, very proud to introduce to the public tonight. She has become an integral part of the Milton Public Schools in less than 2 months, Ms. Vu. And V has really gone to every school, every classroom. She came up with Ms. Sheehan, Assistant Superintendent Sheehan, short and long-term plans after meeting with all of these individuals. And we want to welcome you on behalf of the Milton Public Schools. You are a huge success already. The feedback from administrators and the position is going to help us drive instruction, and which will ultimately drive student achievement. So on behalf of the Milton Public Schools, V.
Thank you, Mary, for that generous introduction. And I'd like to say hello to the school committee here as well. So as Mary mentioned, my name is Vivu, and I just started with Milton Public School actually a month ago to the date. And in these past few weeks, I've been able to meet with the leaders of our different schools, our curriculum coordinators, our departments head, to try to get a sense of what's going on here in the school system in terms of data that people are collecting and using in the classroom. And I'm really excited to come before you tonight and give this presentation along with my colleagues here to kind of give you and the viewing public a general overview of what is happening in terms of internal assessments inside the Milton Public Schools and what we have plans for going forward. So without further ado, I'd just like to start the presentation. If there are any questions along the way, please feel free to stop me.
I do have one other thing, and I promise I won't say anything until you're done. I said, I want to frame this tonight, that the administrators said to me, we'll have to get into a pattern of when we're sharing this, and I want to recognize Member Mary Kelly. As I shared with the individuals on staff, Ms. Kelly was asking about internal assessments before the Department of Education was talking about district-determined measures. And so through this advancement budget, we were able to provide the staff the time to develop these internal assessments, use some of the funds at different levels to purchase the internal assessments we need. So this is very significant that Ms. Kelly asked for this presentation. And V, I think it gave you a great opportunity to learn the system inside out in a very short time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you want to introduce your co-presenters?
Absolutely. So to my left here is Amy Gale, and Amy is the curriculum coordinator for both the Cunningham and Collycott Elementary School. So she's here to speak on behalf of the elementary school. And then you all know Dr. Spalding. She's the head of Pierce Middle School here in Milton Public Schools. And then we have Michelle Cruiser, who is one of our assistant principals here at the high school. So they'll all help me with this presentation today. All right, so get started. Make sure this works. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of assessments and some of the terms that we use to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because I think when we're talking about assessment and data, sometimes it is a very loaded term in the education context. A lot of people, feel this way and that way about data and testing and assessment. So I just want to make sure that we're all speaking the same language when we're talking about assessment here in Milton Public School. Now I'll go through kind of a general overview of all the assessments that we're currently doing at the different school level, elementary, middle, and high. Then my colleagues here will kind of report on progress that they've made since last summer when they gave this presentation to the school committee. And then I'll talk about district next steps and what we'll be doing. So to talk about assessment, I think there are several categories of assessment, and I'm just going to talk about these two very quickly, a diagnostic assessment and summative assessment. So these are the really straightforward, easy to understand type of assessments. So a diagnostic is usually a pretest that a teacher gives at the beginning of a class, a course, the beginning of the year, and it's really best used by teachers and coordinators to identify gaps in skills and knowledge so that they know how to prepare the instruction for the rest of the year. And then we have summative assessment, and you all know quite a bit about this. This is an evaluation of student learning given at the end of an instructional unit or at the end of the year against a standard or a benchmark. So it's best used to provide achievement and or growth data at the end of a course or end of the year. So some examples are end of unit assessments, final exams, and of course the infamous MCAS or PARC that we're actually switching. We're in the process of doing PARC now. So PARC is the summative assessments that our district is doing. So we have assessment at the beginning of the year, that's diagnostic, end of the year summative. What do we do in between? How do we know that teachers are teaching and students are learning what they're supposed to be teaching, what they're supposed to be learning? So formative assessment really helps to monitor student learning by providing ongoing feedback that can be used by teachers and students to improve learning and teaching. And it's best used by teachers and coordinators as tools to plan for instruction and collaboration. So the idea of a formative assessment is really, you give it out as a check to make sure that students are learning what you're teaching in the classroom. And it is an iterative process whereby, you find out that the percentage of your students are not learning something, then you can quickly adjust your instruction to make sure that you meet that need. And it's formative and it's iterative. The data is not always pretty. It's in fact, very, sometimes very messy, but that is the process. That's the iterative process that allows you to kind of identify what the gaps are of instruction during the course of a year. So some formative assessment may include terms like common assessments in the classroom, essays, tests, quizzes, projects, performance-based tasks. These are all examples of formative assessments. Then we have benchmark, interim, and internal assessments. These are also terms that are commonly associated with formative assessments. And so I mentioned that it occurs during the course of instruction, during the course of the year. And it's not necessarily comparable one unit to the next. It really depends on the purpose of the assessment. So when you're talking about formative assessment, you really need to talk about the whole context of how it's being used in the classroom to really understand how to interpret the results. And Milton Public School uses a combination of all these approaches to really evaluate teaching and learning here. So I'll go through all that. So what can assessment tell us? And I'll talk about 3 types of measure here. So growth is a measure of academic progress made from one point to another point in the, at some point in the year. So the important thing to really remember about growth measure is that you have to make sure that it's measuring the same thing from the beginning of the year to the end of the year so that you can really compare the data and say that there's been growth. So for example, if you're measuring fluency data at the beginning of the year, but at the end of the year, you're measuring your students have moved on to comprehension, and you're getting data about comprehension, then you're really comparing apples and oranges. So for growth data to really work, you have to make sure that you're measuring the same thing at the first point and at the second point. The other type of measure is performance. This is pretty straightforward. It's basically mastery of concepts or skills that were taught in the class during that particular unit. And then the third type of measure is predictive. And this kind of measure supposedly predict how a student will do on a standardized exam such as the MCAS or the PARCC. So predictive measures are really hard to do, and most internally developed assessment will not have a predictive component to it. You know, this is where the big testing company make their money in designing tests that supposedly will tell you if your students will pass the MCAS or will pass this, the PARCC. But this is not something that a district level assessment will be able to do. So I did want to mention that because a lot of people have the idea that, you know, if you do this assessment, then it's going to let you know that students are on grade level, that they'll pass the PARCC or the MCAS, and that's not necessarily the case. It's very hard to get this measure to work right. So I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about in terms of growth and performance. So let's look at this example of FMP reading level, which is an assessment that we do use here in Milton Public School. So this is giving you the reading level for Susie and Johnny in the fall and the spring. And so in the fall, Susie was at an I, and in the spring, she was at an M. Johnny was at an L in the fall, and in the spring, he was at an N. So when you're counting the levels, you see that from I to M, Susie made 4 levels of growth. But from L to N, Johnny only made 2 levels of growth. So N is grade level for the spring term. And you can see in this example that although Susie actually achieved more growth than Johnny did, she's still slightly below grade level. So it's, I bring this example to you and to the folks watching at home because I think it's really important for you to distinguish what exactly you're looking for when you're using a formative assessment in the classroom. So it's really just important to match up the purpose of an assessment with the interpretation of the results. So if you're looking at, you know, just the achievement data for this, you might say that, oh, Susie is still below grade level, but considering that she started way below what Johnny did, she made tremendous gains, and we have to recognize students for making progress in the classroom too, and the teachers for helping them make that progress. So what about district determined measures, or DDM? This is a term that is used more frequently, I guess, more recently, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about what it is because we do have to acknowledge it. So it is part of the new educator evaluation system where every teacher will need to measure and report on student growth based on 2 assessments referred to as district determined measures to show that impact on student learning. So this is a requirement coming down from the state that every district will have to comply with. So one DDM may be the student growth percentile, the SGP obtained from the MCAS or the PARCC or another growth measure, and another DDM may include portfolios, commercial assessment, district developed assessment, or capstone projects. So these are all examples of what could potentially become a DDM. So in Milton Public School, a DDM working group has been convened to identify among the existing assessments whether they can be used for each grade level or each content area, or whether there needs to be new assessment developed for each grade level and content area. And although some internal assessments today, presented today, could be DDM's. Milton Public School primary objective in using internal assessment is really to assess teaching and learning. Okay, so this is really the culmination of my, my research in the past couple of weeks of meeting with all the leadership in the district, talking with all the curriculum coordinators, and trying to really parse out what teachers are doing at each grade level, what kind of assessments are being used. So in grade 1, we have the Fountas and Pinnell, which is an assessment that measures reading ability in ELA. And you can see that the FMP is carried through in grade 2. In grade 3, we start having the Scholastic Reading Inventory, another reading assessment which provides data on student reading comprehension and growth over time. And in grade 4 and 5, they basically follow through with giving the SRI and the FMP again. So what you can see here is there are common assessments that are vertically aligned from grade level to grade level, which gives us really a great opportunity to really look at the data and see how it changes from grade 1 to grade 2, grade 3, so that you can kind of plan for the following year what to do about instruction. In French, we have some common assessment called the GB Plus at the end of the year, which is aligned with the Fountas and Pinnell. And then in grade 2, they do the GB Plus throughout the year. In grade 1, they only do it at the very end of the year. And the reason is, our first grader are being immersed in a new language. They're really just trying to figure out basic vocabulary, so they don't have the reading comprehension level yet to be tested on the standardized assessment. But teachers have developed kind of their own assessment to use with students to help with how do you identify whether a student is decoding correctly or comprehending terms correctly. So we have that for the French language program. And then we have pre-tests, and the French programs are also piloting post-tests. And then in math, we have pre-tests, mid-years, and finals, and also end-of-unit common assessments for each of the units that they're doing. In science, science is implementing a new curriculum called FOSS this year, and our science coordinator has made a really great stride in just bringing the curriculum into the classroom and making sure that every teacher has a chance to work with this new curriculum. She's now developing common unit assessment essentially for this curriculum, which will be implemented next year. So this is happening all at the elementary school level. In the middle school, you see that we have the SRI, the Scholastic Reading Inventory, and the FMP, the Fountas and Pinnell, are carried over from 6th through 8th grade. The middle school is also piloting a new assessment this year called Academic Merit, which is essentially a closed reading and writing assessment that is aligned to the Common Core. So they're really excited about that. I think they have plans on continuing with this assessment in the following year. And even the high school has tested out this academic merit assessment, and they really like it, and they want to continue doing that next year as well. In history and geography, the middle school is piloting these DBQs, document-based questions, as a type of assessment to obtain a growth measure. So they're doing this assessment at the beginning of the year and then toward the end of the year, and it's asking students to use primary and secondary sources to respond to pre-AP document-based question, and this is going to be a growth measure for the school as well. In math, they have end-of-unit common assessments, and they are also piloting a performance-based measure drawing on the MARS performance-based task. MARS is Mathematic Assessment resource service. And this performance-based task is, instead of doing a straightforward math problem using equation and whatnot, they're being asked to do a task to apply all their critical thinking skills. So this assessment is really about critical thinking skill. Can you apply the strategies that you're learning in your various math classes to this problem? And so it's definitely a higher order assessment. It's not just multiple choice, pick this, pick that, but it's really asking students to think and apply their knowledge. And then they're going to do this again at the end of the year to measure whether students have made growth. So we're excited to see the results of that. In science, they have a pre-test and a post-test in all the sciences, in earth, physical, and life sciences. And they are piloting claims, evidence, and reasoning tasks, very similar to the idea of the math test, where students are being asked to use critical thinking skills to solve a science problem or a science task. And in the high school, in the humanities, they're also doing a pre-test and post-test using an essay writing prompt. So they've done the pre-test already, and we're collecting the data for that. And they're going to do a post-test at the end of the year to measure whether students' writing skills have improved. They also do a common mid-year and a final. And like I mentioned earlier, they are also piloting the academic merit assessment. And in math, they have common unit assessments in courses 1 and 2. And they're doing the collaborative critical thinking task. So again, growing from what the middle schools are working on in terms of really using critical thinking skills. The high school is also picking up that piece of it and really incorporating these tasks into their assessment in the classroom. They're also giving a common mid-year and final. And science, common unit assessments in biology, chemistry, and physics, and common mid-year and final. So I mentioned that math have common unit assessment in courses 1 and 3, and they're really working hard this summer to develop some common unit assessment for courses 3 as well, so that next year we will have the whole spectrum, course 1, 2, and 3 with common assessments. And the high school curriculum, the high school science curriculum rather, is undergoing some revision in chemistry and physics, so they'll be revisiting their assessments as well, and they will be modified. So that is really, a lot of the information that I was able to learn and extract from talking to everybody in the district so far. And now my colleagues are going to give you some updates on what they've been up to since last summer.
Thank you, Bea. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know Ms. Vu as she has joined our team here in the Milton Public Schools. And I vowed when she was hired that I was going to make her my best friend. And I think she's well on her way to becoming my best friend. I am Amy Gale. I'm the curriculum coordinator for Cunningham and Collycott. However, I work very closely with the curriculum coordinators at Tucker and Glover so that we can assure curriculum and assessment alignment across the district. That's really been the focus of our work for the last 2 years. And we're really excited by what's been happening over the last couple of years and growing not only our curriculum, but also our ability to internally assess our students and analyze that data. So I'm going to update you on what's been happening since July. One of the things that's really happened since July is that we've begun to change the conversation in assessment. No longer do we talk just about, oh wait, we're on the wrong slide, sorry. Okay. That's us, right? No longer are we talking simply about achievement. We are now talking about growth as well. And as Ms. Vu indicated in the beginning of the presentation, it really is a validating measure, especially for those students who might not quite yet be at benchmark, but who have made tremendous growth. And we really want to make sure that we are validating the progress of those students and also the exceptional teaching that's happening in the classroom. And I think by changing the conversation to growth, we're really better able to do that. So that's been great. We have been working with our grade level facilitators. These are teacher leaders from each building at each grade level to really talk about how we can measure growth within our Fountas and Pinnell assessment and also within our scholastic reading inventory. They have worked with the curriculum coordinators to develop growth bands that will help to measure growth for each and every student. This is a challenging process. As some of you know, assessments, sometimes children get hundreds on assessments, and if they get 100, how do we measure their growth? And this has really sparked some wonderful conversation between ourselves and also with ourselves and the grade level facilitators, who then bring it back to their teams. We are looking forward to also working with the teams of teachers in schools to analyze the PARCC data when it comes in. We will be getting student growth percentiles from the PARCC data this year. They will be able to link it to the MCAS data from last year. So that, again, I think will be a very validating measure for us to look at. And we also want to look at that data in terms of the item analysis so that we will be able to inform our Common Core instruction moving forward. In terms of, am I on math performance tasks? Yes, math performance tasks. One of the things that we've done this year, and Dr. Leif Lagueros and Dr. Karen Spalding have turned us on to the Mars assessment tasks. That's something that we as a team have worked to review. We're not implementing them as of yet. We're reviewing them. We also are reviewing the everyday math common assessment tasks, which they have a new version coming out of those next year, and those are called EM4. So we've been looking at those as well. And we have been working with our grade level facilitators to ensure that we can measure growth with the assessments that we have in place, our pre-test, our mid-year, and our final. And that, again, is information that we train the grade level facilitators with a data-driven protocol, and then they bring that back to their teams. Another one of the exciting initiatives that's been taking place at the elementary level this year has been the use of TS Gold in all of our preschool and kindergarten classrooms. TS Gold is interesting as it is aligned with the Common Core, but also measures the social emotional growth of children, the cognitive growth of children, and again, the academic growth of children. And they found that this is a nice predictor of future success in school. And as a parent of a kindergarten child, it's been very useful for me to see that information coming home, which is fantastic. Technology has played a huge role in what we have done in assessment this year. Thanks to the MFE, we were able to purchase iPads and conduct training for over 50 teachers in terms of using an iPad app to administer the Fountas and Pinnell benchmark assessment system, and that's been tremendously successful. All of the teachers in TS Gold are using iPads as well to document growth with their children and upload evidence of the growth of those children so the teachers can share with the parents at conferences actual pictures of their children engaging with the curriculum, which has been fantastic. The French program has purchased the GB Plus software, so while it's not an online app like we have for the Fountas and Pinnell, it is a way for the data to be housed and also for them to be able to share it more effectively with their colleagues. And today we actually had a wonderful half-day professional development day on using Google Apps for Education to also share the data that we collect from teachers and also sharing documents and resources with children in the classroom. So we've done about 10 years of growth in the last 6 months when it comes to technology. Finally, last but not least, science. This year, we have implemented the FOSS units of study. These have been a fantastic addition to the science curriculum at the elementary level. Children are doing science every day as opposed to reading about science or listening to science. The FOSS units of study have been translated into French, which has been, again, wonderful for our students in the French program to be able to participate. And they have worked under the guidance of Science Curriculum Coordinator Bernadette Moonen to create common assessments that will be implemented for the next school year. So, next steps. As I stated earlier, we are going into the third year of our common district assessments, and at this point, our eye is really on refining our protocols and procedures around internal assessment. We would like to review the assessment analysis procedures based on the information that we have collected over the last 2 years. We would like to utilize the writing portion of the Fountas and Pinnell, which we have not done yet. This is something that happens after you have done the running record, which is the reading portion of the assessment. And we really find that for measuring growth, that the writing piece is a really validating measure. We also, within the same vein, want to create writing performance tasks for the children in grades 4 and 5, for whom we don't do the Fountas and Pinnell for each one of them. And that's something that we're really looking forward to doing, especially as we have our eye on improving the writing instructional practices at the elementary level. We also want to make sure that we continue to create common assessments, both in French language and Spanish. Moving to the math, we have looked at growth from our pretest to our mid-year already, but we're now looking at growth from the perspective of the mid-year to the final exam. And that's something, again, we've been doing with our grade level facilitators using the data-driven protocol. And we also want to continue to review the tasks, the MARS tasks, as well as the EM4 tasks, to see if those are something that may help us more effectively measure growth. In terms of the science, as I said before, we're really looking to further develop and implement common assessments, both in French and English, for grades 3 to 5. So it's been a busy couple of years. It's been a very busy last 6 months, and we met as coordinators yesterday, actually, and really started planning for the work that we're going to be doing with teachers over the summer and into next year. So I feel like we're at a very exciting place for the Milton Public Schools right now. And I will pass it along to Karen Spalding. A click for you, because I did such a good job.
So I think the statement that I made to Superintendent Gormley after meeting or spending a half an hour with V was, she's a keeper. Because she does really understand assessment and data, and it's exciting to have her on the team. So I'll give you a brief update on where the Pierce Middle School has been since, or what we've been doing rather, since July. The first thing that we were hoping to do was to compare the targeted reading support student F&P data with the English language arts results. And we had some very promising, I put 2 of those findings from the presentation that we did in October, 2 of those findings from what we saw in terms of growth for students who were receiving the reading support. And just to clarify, in terms of the reading assessments that we do at the Pierce Middle School, we do the Scholastic Reading Inventory for all students, and then for students who are notably below grade level, we follow up with the Fountas and Pinnell to give us more information and guide the targeted reading support for them. We wanted to expand the Scholastic Reading Inventory to 8th grade. We did that for this year, so all students in grades 6, 7, and 8 had the SRI administered to them in the fall and will again in the spring. We look to implement the mathematics assessment resource performance tasks to collect growth data for this school year, and those come out of the Silicon Valley Math Initiative. And there are national data sets that we can compare our students to give us information, and they are complex, rigorous, multi-layered math performance-based tasks. So for example, students might receive an image of a family, an extended family, and then they receive a graph plot with names, with just names and dots and no labeled axes. And they have to, based on just that initial information, match up the images to what they see on the graph. And then they take it one step further and they create a mathematical model. So they might create an equation based on the data that they've now constructed just from the photo and what they have in the graph. And then they have to explain their mathematical reasoning around that, around their decisions and thoughts on that problem. So when once we administer the MARS in the spring and then we get our PARC results back, we are hoping to be able to look at whether or not there's any predictive value which is messy work, but we want to look to see if there's any connection between how students do on these MARS tasks and how they perform on PARC. We also had the goal of completing the common assessments in science, and we do have one common assessment per trimester per grade level, so that's in the earth, life, and physical sciences. And we did implement or administer a pretest at the beginning of the year in all 3 of those disciplines so that we could look at how students had gained understanding over the course of the year. And then finally, we wanted to continue the work on the claims, evidence, and reasoning. And we have draft performance-based tasks for those, and the rubrics, we're working on the rubrics, developing those. And hopefully what you saw across all of the columns for the internal assessments at the Pierce, which is also true for the elementary, is there's really this theme of moving beyond a simple give me 2 + 2 = whatever that might be, 4, and really moving into these more complex problems for students, whether it's in English language arts, where they're really being asked to think critically about a piece of text, or if it's in history and geography, where they're interacting with primary and secondary sources and using evidence from those, whether it's in mathematics, where they're applying mathematical thinking, or whether it's in science, where they're building their, or justifying their claims with evidence and explaining their reasoning, just as they do in math, just as they do in history and geography, and just as they do in English language arts. So our next steps are to collect that final SRI data in May 2015. We're going to squeeze it between our PARC work that we've been doing lately. Collect final F&P data for those receiving the targeted reading support and look at their growth. And then we want to determine whether or not, right now we're piloting academic merit in the 7th grade. Teachers also participated in professional development related to that. And the academic merit, again, is a close reading. Students engage in close reading, which is not what I'm doing with my glasses and the piece of paper, but rather a very thoughtful, analytical reading of a text where students look for details and patterns for really deep and precise understanding of the text. And so there will be conversations around whether or not to expand that to grades 6, 7, and 8, to 6 and 8, piloted in 7th grade. We'll continue the development of the document-based questions, and again, so document-based question exercises are what appear on advanced placement tests for in the area of history, and so we do what are called mini-Qs, which are sort of smaller versions of that, where they're really complex questions where students have to dig into primary and secondary sources, again, explaining their thinking and rooting it in the evidence. So we'll continue the development of that. In mathematics, again, we'll implement the second round of the performance-based assessments. The other thing not captured in this PowerPoint that the mathematics department has also been doing is what we call rule of 4 tasks. And those are where students have to, for a particular task, show 4 representations of the same idea, a graphical representation, mathematical model, that kind of thing, explain their reasoning. And so they've been working on that actually as a department. And then finally for science, to continue to develop the rubrics and also develop anchor papers, or rather identify anchor papers. So what we're trying to do across all of the subject areas is develop detailed tools so that when scoring happens, whether I score it or Amy Gale scores it or Vivu scores it, that there's really still a high bar from one person to the next. And so we're really spending a lot of time having clearly articulated rubrics for what we expect to see in work, and then identifying papers that show those criteria in the work. So we can really have consistency around scoring as we look at growth and those kinds of things.
All right, I'm going to go over some of the things that we've been doing at the high school since July 2014. Our first goal was to pilot the mathematics performance tasks in the core math courses to collect data growth, and we have done that. We are participating in collaborative critical thinking tasks for the students in all the math courses. They do 1 per term. They're open-ended performance-based tasks, kind of like the same idea that Dr. Spalding was talking about with, having students look at a problem and solving it in many different ways, and really something deeper than just, like you said, 2 + 2, what's that answer? So we are doing that, and the feedback from the math teachers is that they want to do more because they feel like the students really need that practice. So it's been positive so far, and they want to include more moving into next year. The second goal was to review and revise the format of mid-year and final exams in the math courses to mirror that of the PARCC assessment. And we have done that in our courses, not only the mid-year exam at this point, but we also have modified some of the common unit assessments. Now, for the common unit assessments, they didn't release the PARCC sample questions until late. So we had to simulate what they would look like for the common assessments. But then by the time the mid-year came out, we had the sample questions, so we were able to include some of those on our mid-year exams. And then the plan is to also reformat some sample PARCC questions for the final exam too. The next goal was to implement common unit assessments in core science classes, and that implementation is in progress. Chemistry and physics were undergoing some curriculum revisions, so they do have common unit assessments right now, but they are still revising the curriculum into next school year, so they will modify accordingly as we go on. The next goal was to review and revise the format of the mid-year and final for the science classes to align with the revised pre-AP and AP standards, and that has been done for the mid-year exam for all the for all the science courses except for biology. And the reason why biology was not modified for the new standards is that they're still testing on the old standards. So we have to keep it as close to the MCAS as possible because that's what our students are getting tested on in biology for now. When we do switch over, probably by, I think, 2018, we will modify it accordingly. And also the revision of the final exam is planned for the end of the year. For our last goal, we had implementation, review, and revision of a common rubric for the persuasive essay that was for the history classes in order to collect growth for 2014-15. So this has actually been done in not only the history class where they work on a persuasive essay, but also in the English classes where they work on an explanatory essay. They do a pre-test now, and they do a post-test. They have a common rubric that they grade on. And they used that pre-test to develop different units to focus on during the school year. For example, Barbara Wright, the department head for humanities, told me, one of the weaknesses was supportive contextual evidence. So they did a mini unit on supportive contextual evidence, and they would give a small essay to write, not as big as this pre-test and post-test, to evaluate how students were doing on that and how they were progressing on that. Same with, she gave another example of transition sentences between paragraphs. So they did a small unit on transition paragraphs, and then they were assigned a task to write a few paragraphs. They were assessed on that. So it's not only the pre-test and the post-test, they're using that pre-test to decide on how they can work on different areas during the school year. Our next steps. So for the humanities, they're working on collecting and analyzing data from the pre-test and the post-test in May to discern growth in ELA and history. This is our first year doing this pre-test and post-test with the common rubric, so this is something new, and we want to continue to do that. And this ties into the second piece, which is move forward with the implementation of academic merit common assessment in humanities. The high school teachers have really fallen in love with the academic merit system. One of the things that Dr. Spalding was talking about was calibration of grading. A feature of the academic merit that benefits students and teachers is they have a double blind, they call it a fine tuner for grading. This year the history teachers are all working on it, and by the end of the year they hope to all become classified as readers. What they do is they grade essays, and there's double blind grading. So they calibrate. If one teacher is grading an essay and another teacher is grading an essay, the goal is that they grade it the same way across the board. So the English teachers some of them are working on it this year, but they're going to work on it more into next year. The history goal is to have it all completed by the end of this year, to have all their teachers as readers. And also the goal is to use academic merit to do the post-test and the pre-test using academic merit. in addition. So they haven't done it this year. This year they did everything on paper, but the hope is in the future to use the academic merit system. The other benefit of academic merit is they also have a literary companion for the English teachers, where they have some pre-made tests that go along with some of the works they read, such as Animal Farm, Romeo and Juliet. So the English teachers have been using that. And then for history, they also have Assessment 21, where students can read nonfiction literature and do some quizzing on that. So they plan to use that more going into next year. For mathematics, we're really focusing on creating a system with all these common unit assessments, really getting some way to organize all the data so that they can analyze it. Because we have so much data now, we need to figure out how to organize it and really take a look at it. So that's for courses 1 and 2. Course 3, we're working on common assessments for course 3 next year because the curriculum has been changing over the last few years. And again, the last thing is collecting and analyzing results of these collaborative critical thinking tasks. We've collected data on how students are doing, but how do we organize this? How do we really use this moving forward? For science, again, collecting and analyzing data from the revised mid-year and final exams and common unit assessments too, even though it doesn't say that up there. And we have an exciting project that we're working on for next year. We want to pilot full-year laboratory portfolios that assess both skills and content knowledge in biology and chemistry. They started it this year, just for the second half of the year in chemistry. The idea is to have 2 to 3 entries per term in a portfolio. In the beginning, the tasks are more directed, but as they go along through the year, the plan is to increase inquiry. The goal is by the end of the year, the student is able to design their own lab experiment for the course. So it's a pretty wonderful task that they want to do. The hope, right now we're doing it paper and binders that way, but the hope is to eventually have it digital and have a digital portfolio. So that's an exciting idea that they're working on. Like I said, chemistry is starting it right now, and biology wants to pick it up